Friends, Cyrus and I, we are very happy to be with you today, and especially the youngsters who are joining us to be able to participate in this discussion on premarital counseling. And this is one of the emerging ministries, whereas the Catholic Church has really wonderfully integrated premarital counseling in their church. We are doing the catch up, meaning that in the Catholic Church, the system of premarital counseling is so streamlined and such an important part of their marriage, solemnize their wedding, that in most parishes, every couple who intends to get married must attend a mandatory 3-day or 2-day course, after which premarital course, after which they're given a certificate, and only when they produce that certificate will they get married. Can their wedding be solemnized? So we appreciate the Catholic Church. I wonder if there needs to be a dialogue, a debate, a discussion at the decision makers level to say, how can we prepare our youngsters, protect from misunderstanding, protect from the wrong ideas of marriage that are being purported in the secular world. And how can we prepare them for this holy institution, holy matrimony that they are entering? And therefore, that is one point I would really like to make to the elders and to my friends, pastors, and say, how can we prepare young people before marriage? So one way to do it is to be able to, like TOEFL, GMAT, SAT, and all these people, they organize examination every 3 months or 6 months or whatever. They have a calendar and they can attend it and be ready. Something like that we need to think. So youngsters, as much as you take your studies and career seriously, I believe a time has come when we need to take marriage as seriously as career, if not more important. Because you're having a career for the sake of marriage, not marriage for the sake of career. So be careful. Try not to put the cart before the horse. All right. So let us get cracking on this important aspect of premarital counseling. Now, we have done marriage counseling, just so that you know, youngsters, that there was a seminar, a 3-day program conducted for your parents, those who were able to make time. But today, it is your time. You know, you may be at a marriageable age. You may have, the thought may have just crossed your mind. You may be in a relationship. You may you may have been actually engaged and ready to get married. And some of you may even be having a marriage date in mind and fixed. And some of you are doubtful whether marriage is for you, because many youngsters are having that dialogue also. Should we get married at all? So these and many other questions must be looming large in your mind. And Bible has a very important answer, a response to all of us, all of you who are contemplating marriage, thinking marriage, preparing for marriage, so on and so forth. All right, so let us look at what is premarital counseling. There are several things that we can cover under the curriculum, if you like, or program, if you like, for premarital counseling. For example, what is Christian marriage? That is one whole session we can conduct. We can conduct in terms of how to understand the differences between a man and a woman. All right, there is a sexuality that is attached to a man. There is a sexuality that is attached to a woman. And when they celebrate their sexuality as being a strong man, as being a tender woman, both strong and tender, For example, a man is 80% strong and 20% tender, and a woman is, 80% tender and 20% strong, perhaps. So there is a need to understand our unique gifting, unique temperament that God has given us, youngsters, individuals, and recognize our strengths, celebrate them, and bring them to the marriage to make it work. So there is a whole session on what is marriage and what is male and female, what are the male and female differences. Then we can talk in terms of what are the roles that we play. And we can talk in terms of what are the roles of a husband, what are the roles of a wife. Then we talk about finances, children. We can talk about what is love, what is communication, how do we resolve conflicts, how do we live with in-laws, and what is emotional satisfaction, a whole range of things. But considering our current generation, perhaps one of the more pronounced needs of the young people, the question that they're asking is, how do we understand the will of God for our marriage, for our life as a life partner? What are the things that we need to keep in mind when we want to understand whom we should get married to? And time permitting, we will also look at how to go about selecting our life partner. All right. So these are the two things that I'm going to cover, but you're welcome to ask questions either on these two topics or on generally premarital counseling, so that we can address your felt needs rather than just what we want. Time permitting, that is, we will do that. All right. So let me start my presentation and then begin. So discover God's will, finding the love of your life. All right. Now remember, one of the how should I say, attitudes that youngsters are developing is, whatever works for me will do. All right. As long as it works, it will do. Now, that is something that you need to rethink, because marriage is for a lifetime. Because Christian marriage is for a lifetime, that's why you make those vows standing in front of the altar. What do you say? Forsaking all, meaning, now, as I take you to be my wife, or as I take you to be my husband, I have made a conscious decision that I have forsaken, given up the right, looking at, considering anybody else from this time forth. Forsaking all, I take you to be my wife, my husband. So another promise that we make standing there in front of the altar in the church is that till death do us part. In other words, the only thing that can separate us as husband and wife is death, nothing else. So because the nature of our Christian marriage being so permanent, so lasting, and for a lifetime, we must make a considered choice. We must make a serious contemplation and make a very, very personal, intentional, deliberate, and well-informed choice, if you can help it. So as they say, wedding is an event, but marriage is an achievement. Many times, youngsters engage wedding planners, event managers, in order to make sure that wedding is a memorable wedding. Yes, it's beautiful that within your affordability, no matter how little and how conservative, you can still make it memorable by planning it well, by getting into the details, by coordinating the different aspects of the event, by making sure that every eventuality is taken care of. That's beautiful. You have to make your wedding a memorable one. But then that is for a day. That is for one beautiful day that remains as a fixture for the rest of our life. But living a wedding, living a marriage is completely different. There begins, on the sunrise after the wedding, begins our marriage, right? I know there is the first night, there is the marriage and all that, but the real marriage begins thereafter. So wedding is an event. If you have the wherewithal, you can organize it and make it a success. But marriage, nobody can make a success out of it for you. Only you and your spouse can and should have make it a successful one. Therefore, if you make it a successful marriage, if you are in love, you have overcome various ups and downs, whether it is financial ups and downs, whether it is understanding, conflicts, health-wise, relocation of your geographically, all the challenges, if you have overcome, and even after 25 years, even after 30 years, even as 40 years, you're still married and you're in love and you appreciate your spouse, that's an achievement. As somebody said, and listen carefully, somebody said, as a blessing, as a benediction to a couple, just married to a couple, what is a benediction? They said, may you grow in love and may you find love sleeping on one pillow. That you're not sleeping to the corners of your bed, but may you grow in love sleeping on one pillow. So for that to happen, for making marriage an achievement, you got to pray. I know of a mother of two young girls. And when she came to know about our ministry, she said, Samson, you're doing a wonderful job, because she brought her children up in America. And she said, you're doing a wonderful job. And I have taught my young daughters who are 11, 12, and 13, right from that age, I have taught them to pray for their future husbands. Wise woman, she asked her daughter to pray for their spouses as young as that. Now, I wonder if we postpone these things and say, oh, well, we'll pray when we come to it. Right now, there are other things. But this mother understood more than 3/4 of our life is lived after marriage. Therefore, you got to really be praying. Number two, by the way, I gave an example that mother asked the two daughters to pray for a good husband. The vice versa also applies. All right, the boys also should pray for good wives. The second one is prepare. Now, what do I mean by prepare? Prepare as you would have to play different roles, take on different responsibilities as a future husband, as a future wife, as a future mother, or as a future father. So prepare, and we will see what it means to prepare. And finally, pray, prepare, and pair up, marry. All right. Now, there's one big question. What is the right age to get married? All right. Now, the Bible is silent on it, but then the Bible is very proactive when it comes to what is the prerequisite to get married. That is more important to ask for. And we will say those things in a moment. So this is a 3-step approach to premarital counseling. So am I ready for marriage? First, at what age should I get married? And I would say, borrowing the words of King Solomon, there is a time for everything under heaven. There is a kairos in everybody's life. Kairos is God-appointed opportune time. Seize it and take appropriate responsibilities that are appropriate to age. Don't get into it too early and don't get into it too late. And I'm not prescribing any number of years, but you need to discern. But we can arrive at an age considering, am I ready in my capabilities? All right. Am I ready in terms of doing stuff? For example, some girls have never entered kitchen. They don't know cooking, and much less the boys. Some boys never have gone to supermarket and bought vegetables. They don't know what is beans and what is what is beans and what is okra, that is bindi. All right. So, are you ready to set up a home and live? Do you know how to boil milk? Do you know how to rice cook? Do you know how to change? Check the fuse. When it goes away. Do you know how to change a bulb? Do you know the basic chores to run a family? So age is not so much important, but how mature you are, how functional you are for the roles that you're going to take up is an important criteria to decide whether you're getting married or not. Now, I'm not making a lot of these things. There was a mother that I met. This mother also has two daughters, and she was training them to be engineers. All right, very brilliant mother. She herself was a professor, and she has these two daughters, and they are also in good engineering colleges. And when we went on a family visit, all right, so she said, I will never teach my daughters how to cook. They can always earn a lot of money and they can hire people to cook. This is what she said. And I was horrified, and me and my wife exchanged looks and said, what's going on? All right, what's going on? Silently. Anyway, we came away. Now, these two girls did not live in India to hire housemaids to cook, clean, etc. They went to another country and there they struggled. But then over a period of time, they learned and they did. So what I'm saying is that one way or the other, you will learn. But why lose out on the initial years of adjustment? Why make it tough than it is? Why make it stressful than it is? Right? So age is something that is proportionate to the kind of responsibilities that you can take. What about education? Have you finished your education? Some get into love, some get into affairs, and even before the education, they get into marriage. And a lot of times they even get into abusive marriages because they have not been able to make the right decisions. Now, sometimes crises happen. That is all right. You may have to get married soon. That's all right. Job. Do you have a job? Especially men, whose very, very important perception, even biblically speaking, an important role to play, a strong role to get bread and provide for the family. What about job? Today, there are more girls with more jobs than boys. And boys, quote unquote, forgive me for saying this, for every 5, if not more, 5 eligible, well-educated, well-placed, well-earning girls, there is 1 boy available. The ratio and proportion is so lopsided. And I challenge always the young men, said, come on, study well, work hard. You are the leaders of the family. It's not that a woman wants to dominate her husband. No, she likes to be led by the husband, but you must be the leadership material in order to do that. So, especially husband, sometimes I see cases where girls, because they're so desperate to get married, age is getting over, They say, okay, my husband has studied well, he doesn't have a job, but he will get a job, we'll see, and get married. And what happens? The husband does not marry at all, do any job at all. He continues living off his wife, and it results in a terrible crisis. And the man tries to dominate, the wife finds very difficult, and the man tries to control, the wife finds it very difficult. Even the finances are controlled, time is controlled, where you spend what time is controlled, and he's just sitting at home. Now that is not a healthy situation, if you can help it. So job is important. Are you ready, financially stable, and worked out the initial stress of a new job? So you need to have financial life skills like financial, budgeting, cooking, housekeeping, socializing. These things are very helpful. Family prayer. Have a mentor, guide, or a counselor to talk about your ideas about marriage and thoughts about your marriage. All these things will keep you in good stead to prepare for marriage. Now, what is the biblical sanction for this? What is a biblical foundation? In the Bible, the Jewish culture, the biblical Jewish culture, was such that at 12 years or 13 years, a boy was declared as a man because he has come of age, and he's declared as a man. And so much so that you would know that he has even a right to get married, a privilege to get married. You'll be amazed, you're shocked. Not that they all get married at 13, but you will be amazed that they get the right. But the Jewish culture is not foolish to make a boy get married. You know what? The Jewish culture makes sure that a boy of 13 years is trained in one craft or the other so that he can make a living. So by the time he is entering teens, he is able to be a baker, a carpenter, a perfumer, a barber, a farmer, whatever you take it, they have a trade through which they can earn a living. And if you want to see a beautiful story unfold on this aspect, I want you to see a movie called I Love You, Rosa. I Love You, Rosa. Rosa, it's a Jewish film. All right. So that's for another time, a discussion. But the point that I'm making is you're ready, not by age, but you're ready by your capability to take on responsibilities, emotional control or emotional stability, financial independence, and you're able to do the basic roles and functions of a husband and wife, and eventually a father and a mother. That is a prerequisite of every boy and a girl. What does the Bible say? The Bible says that marriage is honorable in all, and if marriage is a relationship, then marriage relationship is honorable among all relationships. So that is a life, that is a relationship you're entering. So walk into it honorably. The Bible begins and ends with a marriage, and Jesus even blesses a marriage in the Garden of Cana. So God is serious about it, and you, my dear young ones, must be serious about it. Now, when you are waiting on the Lord, when you are seeking guidance from God, whom should I marry? If you're considering that, if that is something on your plate, then first let me put it this way. What it is not, what is guidance of God is not, all right? It is not a crisis management. Oh, I have to get married. Now, God, show me whom to get married, and let me not make a mistake, run to God in a crisis. No, marriage, you don't get married as a crisis. Yes, sometimes it happens. Father or mother are sick and say, "Oh, I'm about to die. Please get married and fulfill my dream," and things like that. Now, be careful, especially elders. I want to say, don't put pressure if the children are not ready to get married. It is not a crisis management. God does not, indulge in our crises. All right. Sovereignly, He may help us, but then let us not test the Lord by making marriage a crisis and asking God to guide us. It is not a technique or formula. All right. And it is not something to be taken to so and so man of God, so and so woman of God, unless they are gifted in prophecy. Please do not go to such people. Test every spirit. Today, so many youngsters have mortgaged their freedom to these so-called men and women of God who declare themselves as prophets, who are not truly God's prophets. So it's not a technique or formula. You are educated. You got to be in relationship with God. You must be informed of the Bible. And you have to ask God and seek guidance with the help of your pastor. All right? It is not a lucky dip. What happens? There is this boy who is in States and he's looking to get married. And, the parents have shortlisted and keep 5 ready. Come beta, choose any one, lucky dip. We got to be very careful, right? How we go about. It is not like purchasing a furniture. It's much more than that, much more than that. It is nowhere near that. Okay? Obedience. First and foremost, guidance of God is available to us when we have been living an obedient life to Jesus Christ, when we have been following godly principles, when we have been closely walking with the Lord, when we have tried to keep our life, faithfully lived without sin, and whenever we slip, to come back to God honestly and continue to live a godly life. Obedience is very important to receive God's guidance. And submission to the Lordship, that is an ongoing thing. Even as we know that God loves us, we love God and we obey in love. We submit in love. We seek His will in love. Submission to Lordship. And know the guide, right? What language He speaks. He speaks the language of love. He speaks the language of integrity. He speaks the language of faithfulness. He speaks the language of sacrifice. He speaks the language of beauty. He speaks the language of respect, honor. Know the guide, right? When you walk and have an intimate relationship with God through Christ, we will be able to discern His guidance in every area of our life, including marriage. Now, there is this term called God's will. And we have really confused ourselves in many ways. And I'm sure you will be ready for discussion after this. So God's will, there are 3 perspectives. One is that God's sovereign will. Nobody can mess with it. God will not, you don't have a part in it. Although sometimes, God heard even in this area. For example, God's sovereign will for world and cosmic world is set. Einstein, the great scientist, Albert Einstein, the great scientist, he said, the earth is expanding at such a precise rate that any variation can completely disintegrate this world. So in other words, nobody can mess with that. God has instituted it and created it, set it in motion. The sun will always rise in the east and set in the west. Nobody can change it. And there are 4 seasons. Now, that God's will is permanent, unchangeable, sovereign, and we cannot change it. Of course, Joshua, when he was fighting the battle, the sun was stand still till he won the battle. And the astronomers went back into the time history and found out there is a missing day that is attributed to Joshua, biblically attributed to Joshua. The second one, the second God's will is God's moral will, spiritual moral will. And what is that? Oh, I wrote 11 commandments. That's not a mistake. He gave 10 commandments. The first 4 of the 10 commandments is about God. Hear, O Israel, your God is one. You will not bow down and worship to any other idol, neither in heavens or on earth, in the water. You will not make a carved image. So God, the first 4 commandments is to honor God. The next 6 are about your neighbor. All right. So these 10 commandments is God's will, and we are called to obey them and fulfill God's will. And Jesus came and gave a new commandment in John chapter 13, verses 34 and 35. He gave a new commandment. A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another even as I have loved you. You also love one another. By this, all men will know that you're my disciples. So there you go. You want to fulfill God's will, you want to know God's will for your marriage and life partner. First, live fulfilling God's spiritual and moral will. By becoming His children, let us keep the spirit of the commandments. Finally, the third one is God's will, desire, if you like, for an individual is, as you can see in 2 Corinthians 3:18. God's desire is that we look at Christ, behold Him, and become like Him. In Ephesians chapter 4, 11 to 13, it is God's will that apostles, prophets, evangelists, pastors, and teachers must prepare and equip the saints of God for every good work. That is the will of God for individuals and body of Christ. And that is called the will that He has given for individual formation and for the body ministry. God's will for marriage partner falls under this, and that is, it is permissible will. God says, you are permitted to make a choice and fulfill my desire of that kind of a life partner who honors me too. So this is choosing a life partner is part of permissive will. For example, you go to a restaurant. Does God say, I will prescribe my will for your choosing of your menu today in this restaurant? No, it is permitted for you to do whatever you want. Does God prescribe what clothes you choose? You choose clothes according to your desire, and your desire must be to honor God. There are so many things that God left to us what we would do with our money, what we would do with our homes, with our vehicles, with all the resources God has given to us. Likewise, God is giving us a permissive will as to whom to choose and get married. That is, falls in the permissive will. God will not choose a life partner for you. In sovereign will, He may call you like he did Prophet Hosea and said, go get married to that harlot or prostitute, that's a different story. But Aam Admi like you and me, if you're not, prophets like that, God does not specifically say, go and get married to this person. Some youngsters believe that somewhere, someone, God has chosen this particular man and woman for me, and he will somehow reveal that man and woman to me, and I will know for sure that that is a man or woman for me, and get married. Now, I don't think Bible supports that argument. Let me tell you one story, how this man went about selecting his wife. So he knows about a girl in his fellowship, and he started praying, God, is it your will? Is this a girl? All that. And then finally he prays that morning before he goes to church. He prays and says, Lord, like Joshua, I'm going to lay up a fleece to find out whether this is the girl you have chosen for me. Now, what is the fleece that he laid? Interesting. The fleece that he laid is, he said, Lord, when I go to church and see, let's call her Mercy or whatever, any name, Lord, when I see Mercy, and if she adjusts her hair clip thrice like this, she will be the girl for me. All right, what is the test? If she adjusts hair clip like this 3 times, that's a girl for me. Now, my dear friends, normally, does girl adjust her clip? Oh, several times in a day. And he said, wow, he has already made up his mind, and he's making God to agree to it and saying 3 times, and that's a girl. Now, that's not a good way to do it. We'll see what is a good way, but that's not a good way. So what do you think? Has God given a freedom for you to choose a life partner, or is he going to decide for you? What do you think?
I think both can be true at the same time. God choosing and our choosing.
Okay, God choosing and our choosing. Okay. Tarun is saying, we will decide, but under God's sovereign will, under God's sovereign will. I like the combination, but are you saying that God has made us a robot that we will select our life partner according to his sovereign will? What do you think? That means he has taken away the entire principle of love and free will. If at all you're saying, Tarun, I'm not saying that you're saying that, but if you are saying, oh, my choice is predetermined by God, that means there's no fun in this life. How do you like when somebody makes you do things which you don't like, or which you realize that, oh, finally you were manipulated to make the choice? And Philip Cheryl is saying choices with us, all right? Choices with us. Now, can you make a choice that will honor God? Can you exercise your choice based on biblical principles? To the extent that your conscience is happy, comfortable, that you have chosen somebody according to God's revealed will, moral and spiritual will, then you are actually pleasing the Lord.
I think it.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I just thought. I think one aspect is also how we try and interpret what God's pleasing will is, or what is pleasing to God. Like some may believe it is only pleasing if you get into full-time ministry, and so I need to choose a partner like that who's also interested in full-time ministry. For some, it is an understanding, okay, God will work through secular workforce. So sometimes we interpret, okay, this is what would please God. So that is, I guess, how we make decisions as well.
Right. Very interesting. Good points of perspective, Philip. But let me give you what you're saying. Let me put it in an example form. Let's say a boy is considering a girl. All right. Or let me give a very stark example so that the argument is understood clearly. Let's say a girl is considering this boy, and she always wanted, because she's very involved in ministry, she always wanted somebody in ministry or interested in ministry, willing to do ministry. Now, here is this boy. He is involved in this ministry, that ministry, that ministry, really involved in ministry. So, but then this girl is trying to discern whether this is the man, and I'm interested in money. I'm interested in ministry, and he is interested in ministry. Is that the criterion to get married and say this is the will of God? Suppose this guy does not have a job. Now, would God want somebody who is not earning to get married, but loosely be involved in all ministries? Is that a good thing? Is this girl safe? Now, again, what is the principle that will guide us? The principle that will guide us is marriage is honorable in all. So you give priority to the principles of marriage, and then, yes, ministry is also part of it. In the pecking order, it comes later. But the most important are fulfilled, and this is in that list, but along with the most important. So, so many marriages are there. I'm aware of it, that, men want to do, quote unquote, do ministry. They do not want to be accountable to anybody, and they will just have a Bible, roam around, and they proclaim that I am a servant of God, minister of God, and hardly getting any money, neither loosely or under any accountability. And here is a woman who has fantastic job, earns fantastic salary, and he wants to control her in the name of this. Now, is that something that you need to really worry about? Does it honor the Lord? Children come in and children grow up, and children have to answer their friends. What does your dad do? Are they proud? I'm not saying that a pastor, a child cannot be proud for. Absolutely. A child can be very proud of being a pastor, very proud of being an evangelist. But do they see father responsible and getting home the bacon? So think about it, and very important that we take responsibility for our choices. Suppose we say, oh, this is the person God made me, God revealed to me, and we finally say that. And when something goes wrong in the marriage, what do we do? What do we say? Whom do we blame? Do we blame God? And that's where sometimes our faith also gets a beating. We think, oh my God, I have fasted and prayed. Oh my God, I have prayed so much. Oh God, I thought I heard the voice of God. Oh God, why did God permit all this? And we start losing faith in our faith. And so we get confused. That's what is happening in today's generation. Right? So let me continue. So my presentation, my proposal, according to the scriptures, is that God has given us free will, and one can choose a life partner, and the choice must be God honoring. Right? Look at marriages anywhere. How were they What were the choices that were made? How did they make it? For example, Eliezer, he went to choose a wife for his master's son, Abraham's son, Isaac. Now, what is the criterion he set to choose? What is the criterion he set? Anybody? That was a time when the girls of the village came to draw water. And here is a wise servant of Abraham, Eliezer. He set a character test. He set a character test. Yes, thank you, Tarun. Watering the camels. All right? Watering the camel. And this girl, Rebecca, what did she do? She went beyond. She said, can you give me water? She said, I will not only give you water, but I'll also water the camels. She went beyond the call of duty, the request of a courtesy, and proved that she has that going the second mile character Jesus talked about later. And then finally, it was confirmed when his master said, please don't go anywhere, but only go to my people and get a wife from them. So I want you to keep this in mind, that we can make choices that will honor the Lord. All right? And Eliezer made the choice that will honor his master and Lord. Then, what to look for practically? Okay, practically. One, a believer. No doubt about that. You are a believer, you would like to have a believer, because the Bible very clearly says that we must marry believers, as it is given in 2 Corinthians chapter 6, 14 to 18. And how radically, in the book of Ezra, it talked about marrying believers. All right? But today, I can say this. Just the tag believer does not help. Is not at all enough. Everybody is calling themselves as believers. It's become very difficult to separate the wheat from the chaff. Being a believer is not enough. Look for the fruit of the Spirit. What is that movie? Lagera Munna Bhai. Lagera Munna Bhai. This guy is in the radio jockey. He's there in the studio. And one of the listeners calls and says, I'm with my boyfriend. How do I know this is a good man? So what does this guy say? He says, look at how he treats the waiter. If he treats the waiter disrespectfully, he's not a very good man. But he treats the waiter politely, perhaps he's a good man. Do you see the fruit of the Spirit? If a person is a believer, he will have the fruit of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness, meekness, and self-control. He will have the fruit of the Spirit provided he is abiding in the Spirit, abiding in Christ. So you know that he is a practicing believer. Someone who delights in the Lord. It gets excited if somebody comes to know the Lord. Is happy planning projects for proclaiming the gospel. He is happy in studying the word of God so that he knows how to be a close follower of God. And somebody who delights in his word. All right? Not only to hear, but to know and to follow it, to obey it. So what to look for? This is a very important set of criteria. But this is again not enough. Again, the truth of this is in the practicality. Okay? Someone who walks accordingly. Now, what does the word of God say? In Ephesians chapter 4, it says, those of you who are stealing. Okay, let's not say what the strong word stealing. Those of you who are dependent on your parents must no longer be dependent on your parents, must work hard, stand on your feet, and provide for those who do not have. If you're not working like that, I doubt what use it is to be a believer. Now, you might say, I'm not finding a job. Now, we need to understand that we must set our ego aside and take up a job initially as the Lord provides, and God can give you growth. What happened in the days of depression? Whenever there was a depression and people lost jobs, what are the teachers doing today? All across the country, teachers who are getting decent salaries have suddenly lost their jobs because of the pandemic. What have the many teachers done? They became Zomato, Swiggy, delivery boys, delivery men and women. They had to feed the families. Now, what stops us from taking a job that honorably provides for yourself and the family? Someone who walks accordingly, somebody who does not speak lies, somebody who follows rules. Okay? So these are very important criteria in selecting a life partner. Okay? Also look for someone who is compatible to you in someone who is compatible in education, economic, culture, language, etc. Right? Someone who is compatible educationally, economic status-wise, culture, language, etc. Now here, I'm not saying to be legalistic. Oh, if I am a PhD, my spouse also must be a PhD, not necessary. All right, but basically educated, cultured, understands, all right, does not live on old customs and traditions and which are, more superstitious than anything else. Now, economically, it may help middle class. But if I am, a first generation software employee, software engineer, born to farming laborers. Now, I know many boys in Telugu culture who are children of, the parents are still laborers, farm laborers, and God has given them brilliant education and they become software engineers. Now, it's good for such a person to not go to a girl who is highly educated and highly not educated, but coming from a very rich family. There is a cultural, economic incompatibility. Now, I'll tell you why. I'm not saying it will happen per se. He gets married, such a boy gets married to a girl from that kind of a culture. Now, tomorrow that girl must go to his village and spend a couple of evenings, nights, a few days with the parents. How does she feel? Can she adjust? Will she adjust? Now, that's the test. So what I'm saying is, I'm not saying you should not marry across such vast gaps in culture, but there will be stresses that you should be mindful of. So if you want to have less stress and more compatibility, more quick time to adjust and understand each other, minimize these differences. All right. Then some traits to look for. Okay. Honesty, hardworking, patience, humor, cheerfulness, discipline, confidence, etc. Especially humor, not always laughing at others, but humor when he himself laughs at himself, herself. Okay? A person who does not take himself too seriously. Come on, become a joke sometime. All right? Don't be uptight. Don't be legalistic. Don't be over-righteous, or don't be self-righteous. All right? All these are good traits to look for, celebrate. That's what finally that makes marriage work, in addition to the most important qualities that we have seen earlier of being a believer. Whom to avoid? People with criminal record, reckless lifestyle, either in spending, speeding, or testing, exploring. Okay, let's try smoking, let's try grass, let's try alcohol, let's try, exploring. No. Reckless spending, not earning much, but spending lavishly by borrowing. Speeding, fast life, fast bikes, fast cars, putting life at risk. People with wrong and bad habits like smoking, drinking, pornography, etc. They're harmful, both to health and marriage. People who do not respect authority, like parents, elders, church leaders, bosses, etc. All right? If they are disrespecting their parents today who gave birth to them, who raised them, tomorrow they will not respect you. As simple as that. You are just a new person in their life. If they don't respect authority, they also don't become accountable to anybody. And there comes big problems after marriage. So avoid such people. So is this the right partner? What is the place given to God by this man, by this woman? Do you like each other? Or is it just that, oh, I have to get married. Somebody told me it is God's will. I should get married. Well, I don't like him now. I don't like her now. Maybe tomorrow, maybe in future I'll like. Let me get married. Right? We don't know for sure. As much as a good believer is important, there must be some spark. There must be some attraction. There must be some liking. Let me tell you something that happened. It is said there was this guy early, when chatting and all these things were happening. This guy started chatting with a girl. Very soon they expressed their affection to each other. And they promised themselves that they will not exchange photographs. And finally, they were even thinking about getting married. So this guy was in another country, and this girl was somewhere in Delhi. And, they finally made plans to meet up and talk to parents and get married. So the boy lands, and he's got a little sister. And the little sister is really making fun of him and said, Bhaiya, mujhe le jao, take me, I want to see the future Bhabhi, she was pulling his leg. Anyway, he goes to meet her for the first time all by himself. And, well, he was disappointed. He didn't like the person that he saw. He came home and he was sad. And as soon as he came home, his little sister, she didn't know what was going on, but she said, have you met Bijli Giri? All right, Bijli Giri. And then this fellow said, Bijli to chodo, diya bhi nahi jala. Bijli to chodo, diya bhi nahi jala. Why? Because all these things happened blind when they were chatting and things like that. And there was no attraction in that sense. So it's important that we are talking about a believer, we're talking about character, we're talking about principles, we're talking about hard work, but what is important is also attraction. You like each other. All right? Then Do you respect each other as individuals, as equal partners? Because somehow Indian culture, it is the wife who has to respect the husband, not vice versa. But the basic dignity and respect must be for both. Do you respect each other's family? Sometimes you say, I want you, I don't want your family. I can't get along with your family. Well, in India, it is not easy, right? Then, can you be friends as well? Is it just formal husband and wife relationship? It can get tiring, especially for the modern generation. Then, can you have satisfying conversations? Is there anything common? Can you have conversations on cricket? Can you have conversations on church? Can you have conversations on common friends? Can you have conversation on the likes and dislikes, the food, the news, right? Do you have common interests? Right? Ministry, we said. Or do you have common interests in terms of the kind of books you read? The arts that you may like? All right. Then is there a common understanding on children, church, finances, right? Can you be companions? Can you be supporting, each other? I know of a marriage where the husband is absolute tech savvy software engineer, and this girl is, absolutely a arts girl in terms of English literature. So, but they get along so well because they take interest in each other's profession. All right. So is there a common understanding on children? Finally, seeking God's will and finding it. When I was young, these were some of the principles that were given to us. I think they still hold good. All of us youngsters, as we are discipled, as we are being discipled by Christ, a right priority, but seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. When we are close to God, walking in God, God will give a good life partner. God's word, gives light. What does Psalm 119 verse 105 say? Thy word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. So the word of God will give you discernment, understanding, clarity in whom to get married objectively. Let us be praying and put away anxiety, and the peace of God will rule our hearts. And very practical, we need to take the godly counsel of people. First and foremost, parents, pastor, youth leader, and other couples that you respect. All right. You consider different opinions and take them in prayer and listen to what God is saying. All right. So counsel of godly people. Then providential circumstances, right? Things fall in place. You get unexpected support from different quarters. And as you walk with the Lord, the Holy Spirit, God is giving you that conviction through making circumstances fall in place. So inner prompting of God by the Holy Spirit, all right? And common sense, don't throw it away. The first clarity is common sense. Like, does she have these basic things? Then other things you need to discern. All right. Inner peace. Right. Finally, you must see that your heart is being ruled by God's peace. All right. So these are some of the things you need to keep in mind as you're making that important decision. And of course, the right time, right? Thank you. Right, I'm not done. This is the first part, but this is an important part. Any questions or any comments?
Dr. Gandhi, do we have another session like another segment in this?
Yes, another segment is there. How to go about, I mean, what is the method of choosing a life partner?
So I believe we might just want to go through that segment, and so a lot of questions might be clarified with that segment itself, and then we can take questions closer to like close to 5 minutes to 9 or something, and we can pick up some questions. Right? Thanks.
Good idea. All right, then I'll take the cue from Pastor Mana and then go ahead sharing the next segment. I've titled this as Bridegroom Hunting. There was a time, marriage has evolved. There was a time when elders, soon after birth, decided within the family who is going to marry who, within the larger family. Then they said, okay, we have gone to the other village, we have gone to that place, we have found a good girl for you, get married. No questions asked. Third stage is, oh, you see a girl, see how she looks, how he looks, and what is the family, and get married. Now, gone are the days of this because of the urbanization. Just the whole community is just spreading all over the world. Our relatives are not close to us. Our community is not close to us. Youngsters have lost touch with their cousins. Within the relative and community, very, very difficult. Youngsters, soon after they get into college, they go into different campuses in different cities. So right from that time, they are also even out of touch with parents and relatives. So it is becoming very difficult for youngsters to find people from the known circle. So today, for youngsters, for parents, for church elders, it's become a challenge to find a suitable spouse for our children. No wonder matrimonial sites, marriage bureaus are minting money because people are, thousands and thousands of families are looking for a bride or a groom for their children. So how do we go about finding a life partner? One is what to look for in a life partner. Another one is how to find this life partner, whether it is parents for their children or children for themselves. It's become a challenge, not easy. Okay, so in this whole scenario, we are looking dating as a big thing in India. And the Christian community is grappling with this whole thing. What should be our stand regarding dating? What should we say to youngsters if they ask about dating? And people are silent. People are not able to take a stand, and youngsters are confused. So maybe this presentation will bring some clarity in that area, and let's see that. Bride, groom, hunting, modern day dilemmas. The objective for us is that facilitate discussion and pros and cons of different ways of finding a life partner. Abraham sent his wife, I beg your pardon, his servant to find a wife for his son. We cannot send, however trusted our family, helper may be. I don't know whether we'll do that, capable of that. Who shall we send? All right, what shall we do? All right, so different ways of finding a life partner for our children. Do we look for arranged marriages? What are the pros and cons? Do we encourage our children to go for love marriages? What are the basically love marriages to find your own life partner? Not like a typical old thing, run away and marry, not that kind of a love marriage. What about cross-cultural marriages? Because if you are uprooted from your close community, most of the marriages are going to be across communities, cross-cultural marriages. And when I say cross-cultural marriages, I'm not necessarily talking about Hindu Christian marriages or Muslim Christian marriages. I'm talking about culture being different within the Christian community. Dating, right? What is our stand on dating? And what about matrimonial sites and chat rooms, right? So let us look at arranged marriages. One, is it biblical? Adam and Eve marriage is arranged one. All right. They say that there is enough theology in the first 3 chapters of the Bible, including dating, including fixing of marriages. All right. It was an arranged marriage by the Lord. And Isaac and Rebekah, Moses and Zipporah, arranged marriages. What are the characteristics of arranged marriages? These marriages are initiated by parents, and the issues of dowry, gift issues are handled by parents. Now, let me just pause there for a moment. I'm not advocating dowry, but in some communities, it has become very, very important issue. I don't know how it is in the north. Are there issues of dowry? Harshit, I can see you, so I'm just picking your name.
I would say that dowry is covered in the name of gifts.
Okay.
So
yeah.
It is not seen or not felt outward, but then
Yeah.
it something being वो family के बीच में it has already been set or something like that.
Okay, so family, it's worked out between the family members.
Yes, I would
Yeah.
say.
Call a rose by any other name, it will smell as sweet.
Yes, but so there are some youngsters or families who have taken stand that ठीक है, whatever it is not gonna happen. So I think the balance is somewhere there.
Okay. Some families do, some families don't do. But then it is the smell of it is there still among Christian families. Is that correct? Okay. So it is an issue for us. We need to think about it. So in arranged marriages, it is discussed by the parents and you leave it to them. Okay. Then love begins after marriage. In the arranged marriages, okay, you may like somebody, you may feel comfortable with somebody shown by the parents for marriage, but true love, falling or growing in love, begins after marriage. More surprises, but higher commitment to make it work because you have agreed to it and the parent support is there. All right. make it work. And then more harmony in family and extended family, all are taken into consideration. All right. So everybody helps to make it work because it was a joint decision. So this is a profile of an arranged marriage. Now, how many marriages are arranged and how many marriages are love and then arranged? All right. That seems to be becoming the modern trend. All right. So hold on. Let's look at love marriages. Love marriage is biblical. Okay. I'm using the word biblical. Do you agree with it? Please let me know. Jacob and Rachel, that was a love marriage. And even till today, African tribes, American culture, European culture, many South American cultures, it is the love marriage. Arranged marriages is an Asian concept, and more so again in Indian continent, Indian subcontinent. If you go to Singapore, which is Malaysian Chinese, again, there's love. If you go to Northeast in our own country, most of the Naga, the tribes, it's all love marriages. Then if love marriages or, the book of Song of Solomon would not have been there. All right. So the profile is that it is self-initiated. The boy or the girl initiated. Dowry gift issues are not dealt with because the boy and the girl have taken a stand. Usually not. Love begins before marriage, right? Love begins before marriage. And then less surprises, but more expectations. Less surprises because you've known your spouse before marriage. You know what to expect. Less surprises, but more expectations. That means the love after marriage should be more than the love that we experienced before marriage. Right? Now that's a test. When they get into love marriages, they lose some support from family and extended family because you're breaking some hearts. You've taken away the joy of choosing a life partner for you, for someone. All right? Lose some support from family and extended family. Okay, so this is love marriage. Even this is biblical. Arranged marriage is biblical. Love marriages are biblical. You have examples. What about cross-cultural? Meaning intercaste. I don't know in the north if the caste is there, but in the south, it is too much, even among Christians. Intercaste. Different languages, right? Tamil and Hindi, Telugu and Hindi, Malayalam, Kannada, South Indian languages in North India. Punjabi, different languages, different countries and cultures. That is international marriages. All right? And then different strata, rich, poor, educated, not so educated, rural, urban, okay, different strata. Education. Then denominations. This is another big thing among us. All right, what denomination? And each denomination has its own culture. The worship, for example. The interactions among people, for example. If you come to my church, there's no clapping and jumping and all that, worshiping the Lord. And somebody comes from that kind of a worship tradition, which is perfectly biblical. This is perfectly biblical. There could be struggles. Let's not go to this church. And then what happens? Oh, the whole family is affected because this spouse's family is looking forward to worship along with a young couple. Gone. That big break there. Cross-cultural marriages. When these are the different marriages that are happening, these are the methods that are aiding this kind of marriages. All right, matrimonial science. Many times youngsters have asked, is it right to find a life partner through matrimonial acts? The Bible again is silent on culture. When the family and the church fails, the community takes over. That is as simple as that. When the family and the church fails, the community takes over. Community as in the secular business world, corporate will take over. That's what is happening. All right, good resource, but poor credibility. The profiles that are listed must be seriously tested, must be seriously researched. Make sure the details that are given are accurate. Nobody is cheating anybody. So many profiles have poor credibility. So one must be very careful. Agree on complete verification. All right. Only when everybody, both sides agree on complete verification. Like you verify the documents of a property that you buy, you must verify every detail that they claim, based on which you're making a decision. Have a mediator. Youngsters must have a mediator, parents or mentors, to talk on their behalf, if they like a profile on the matrimonial acts, so that they can guide, they don't get emotionally involved, and the other person does not emotionally manipulate, etc. Take time, do not rush, right? And there is an emotional risk. You begin to think about the person, you begin to talk about the person, you begin to get involved emotionally. And when the facts do not add up, measure up, or prove to be correct, then you have to say no. There is an emotional risk. Then what you see is not necessarily what you get. So finally, the decision must be made only when you actually meet the person, actually get to know the person after that. Otherwise, up to that point, it has to be just information. Now, is dating a acceptable method to find a life partner? Now, let me give you some roots of this whole thing called dating. What are the roots? It is typically a Western concept. And the roots are that when a boy became, quote unquote, an eligible bachelor, a person who's probably studied and started working, and he begins to think about marriage. Now, listen very carefully. When he begins to think about marriage, and when he wants to consider a girl for marriage, then to know whether this girl is good for me, whether I am good for this girl, with a purpose of marriage, with an intention to think about marriage and give serious thought for marriage, an eligible boy or a man could go to the father and state the purpose and say, I would like to date your girl for marriage and consider marriage. In that context, the father allowed, with certain boundaries, for a girl to go on a date with a boy and with a view to consider whether suitable for each other for marriage. So the point that I'm making is, the very important point that I'm making is, dating has relevance, credibility, currency only in the context of marriage. But look at our society. how much dating goes on with no thought about marriage. Just let's go on a date. That's all. Let's go on a date. Let's go on a date. And that seems to be one way of enjoying and one way of, pleasure, trip, and things like that. So the original concept was not about just enjoying an evening with a boy or a girl, but with a serious purpose and intention, whether I want to date this person in order to explore the possibility of getting married to this man, getting married to this woman. That is the context. Slowly, even in America, even in Europe, what happened? It became promiscuous. It became a way of getting involved intimately and sexually. So, youngsters, I want to suggest a book, 2 books in fact, and both written by the same author. The first one is I Kissed Dating Goodbye. I Kissed Dating Goodbye by Joshua Harris. Because he was disillusioned by what was happening in the dating, especially from a Christian point of view. And he said, dating is not good for Christian boys and girls. Then finally, after some time, he again said there is no other way except that one gets to know and then proposes for marriage. So he wrote a sequel to his, Why I Believed in Dating, something like that, and again by Joshua Harris. All right. So there seems to be, in a culture like America, and where India is fast moving into that kind of a culture, perhaps some relevance for dating. But what are the boundaries? What are the boundaries? Because dating is relating to a person to determine the person is a suitable mate for marriage. Then the recent phenomenon in India, as I told you, is more indulging in each other's sexuality, nothing more. Offers opportunity to know each other, and then personal responsibility is very high. So in other words, you need to be emotionally composed. You need to be focused on getting to know each other in ways that are mature, that are important. All right. And it clashes with conservative culture. So we need to be extra cautious. If at all there is some possibility, it must be with the permission of the parents. And to the kind of a church that you go to, what does the church think? It must be within those boundaries. All right. An option for mature ones, an option, not necessarily a must and should. And risky for emotional ones. That means if you're not able to control your emotions and get involved quickly, it is risk because your feelings are getting ahead of you. So the book I said, all right, that's a good reading. Now, how to date responsibly. All right, those are some of the risks and dangers, but how to date responsibly? First and foremost, the person whom you want to date, introduce that person, your friend, to your family. What do the families say? All right, do they say, yes, you can consider, but don't make a commitment, don't get emotionally involved, definitely not physically, but get to know. Do things together with other common friends, which is also called as group dating in the West. So like serving in the church, learning in within the church or in the community, growing together, in the church and other fora, right? Do things together. In a social setting, you get to know a person much more clearly. They're not in their best behavior, but their true behavior. And that's the best place to get to know a person authentically. If you meet outside by yourselves, Do so in open public places with parents' permission. Set clear boundaries. No touch, definitely no kissing, no touching below the neck, no hugs, avoid all that. So learn to date responsibly, right? If at all that is an option, if at all that is agreeable for in the family and in the church setting, culture. Avoid defective dating. Don't be secretive. It is deceptive. Don't deceive your parents or your loved ones or the pastor and the church leaders. Don't go to secluded places. It is tempting. Do not meet your friend in your apartment alone, never. Do not minimize the consequences of sexual contact before marriage. Rejection, bitterness, shame, guilt, unwanted pregnancies, all these are part of, premarital sex. And it is not honoring God. It goes against God. It's fornication. Premarital sex takes away the joy of marital sex. All right? No. And many churches in Africa, particularly, have started what is called as no premarital sex oath, anyone, even among the group that we are discussing, right? It's an oath. Okay. I'll just skip the chat room and then go to question hour. Okay. So chat rooms are very risky. Try to avoid it. Okay. Okay. Any questions? Any comments?
Dr. Samson, there's a question like, it's very hard to get a 10 on 10 on the things shared, especially the part of culture, economic gap.
Yeah.
What if the girl boy is initially sure to adjust, but when reality dawns, the story is quite different? What should be done in such a situation?
Okay, good.
I think, sorry.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
right.
somewhere on the same borderline would also the same another question would line up. What if one partner sees the ministry of the other as mere job and not something as service unto God? Like, then what did you talk about before marriage? Something
Right.
like this.
Yeah, good. So this question, which Ankit is posing to all of us, is it's very hard to get a 10 on 10. I agree. There's no marriage proposal where everything is hunky-dory. Of course, love can, overlook many things. But it's this. I always say this to young people. Prayerfully decide what are your 10 requirements. Okay, because you said 10 on 10 points that you think you would like your future life partner to have. Out of these 10, make two parts, two lists. One is non-negotiable. That means you will not compromise on those. The second list is what are negotiables? Non-negotiable and negotiable. For example, you might say, my spouse to be a believer, non-negotiable. A girl can say, my husband should be taller than me, non-negotiable. All right. Well, somebody can say, well, I am a postgraduate. I also want my husband to be postgraduate, non-negotiable. Now, there could be 7 other points: this family, this language, this height, this color, etc. Those could be negotiable. So this can help you to be very realistic, very objective. What are the non-negotiable? What are the negotiables? You can even prayerfully share with your parents, share with your mentors, pastors who are searching a person for you. So these are my non-negotiables. This, if it is there, it will be good. I'm praying for these things. That can help you choose the right person. Now, the second part of the question is, what if the girl boy is initially sure to adjust, but when reality, yes. Now, at that point of time, I'm sure they may have intended sincerely to adjust, maybe finding it difficult to adjust after marriage. They must go and seek counseling. How can I adjust? How can my partner help me to adjust? What practical changes I must make in order to adjust, because marriage is for a lifetime. This is to overcome challenges. And a counselor can help you with practical suggestions in how to adjust to new challenges. Okay, is that helpful? I hope it is helpful to Ankit and others.
I think we can take one more question, and while we do that, it's very interesting, Dr. Sampson, in the course of your conversation, and just your style is quite impressive, that you converse and bring out the basic truth. While we do that, a lot of conversation and thought is coming about LGBT and all those things. So I'm quite happy that there's no question like that which has come up. So I think all of us over here do agree that at least marriage has to be between a male and female. So that's a biblical norm of a marriage also. So going ahead with that, maybe just want to pick up a last question Tarun has mentioned. Many boys and girls are marrying late in life and are even single, and then not find compatible partners later in life. Is it all right to marry an older woman or man? If yes, then what age gap should be allowed?
What age gap should we allow? I don't know whether Bible has any such rule. So the first question that we need to ask is, what does the Bible say? But then Bible does give indicators. Now, in our culture, age is automatically respected. So if the husband is older to the wife, there is an automatic degree of respect that is there towards the husband. And respect is a very important need for a man. Just as affection is a great need for a woman, respect is a great need for man. So can an older woman respect a younger man as a husband and actually show it and demonstrate it both inside home and outside? If you can, there is no hard and fast rule that an older woman cannot marry a younger man. But important criterion is that respect is there. Second, practical reason. Why did our elders, in that sense, ensure that a man is older and a woman is younger? A woman loses beauty. Don't get me wrong, but this is a very important part. A woman loses beauty with childbirth and things like that. All right. So a younger woman is, can continue to hold. And by the way, all girls must make it a point to take care of themselves so that a man does not look outside. And it is not a woman's responsibility. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying, don't make it difficult. And a man has no business to look at anybody else. That's for sure. But just to make it easy for him. So our elders wanted this difference so that, the man and woman remain attracted to each other through the marriage. So that's another reason. And so as it is, there are many stresses, and try not to increase the stress levels by challenging age-old norms, which have been tested and proven. Okay, that's a very practical suggestions that I want to offer insofar as age is concerned.